Section 1 of the Sherman Act makes anti-competitive restraints of trade illegal. This includes coordinated actions that harm consumers by limiting the choices available to Americans. That is exactly what the World Federation of Advertisers, the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, and every company that is a member of these organizations has done over the last 5 years. They came together, agreed to limit advertising on certain platforms and news outlets that millions of Americans choose to read, watch, and listen to. And how do they do this? WFA members represent roughly 90% of the global advertising spend. That means WFA has almost complete monopoly power over advertising dollars and a tremendous amount of market power. GARM, which is an initiative of the WFA, includes in its membership over 100 of the world's biggest brands, ad tech providers, and advertising agencies. GARM has representatives from each of the 6 major advertising agency holding companies. GARM's steer team, which acts as a board of directors for the organization and approves nearly every action by the alliance, includes Unilever and other massive consumer goods companies, as well as Group M, the world's largest media buying agency. They collude to make sure that no other advertisers support any news outlets, platforms, or creators that these massive companies don't agree with. And these people do not like conservatives. Again, don't take my word for it. Here's what employees at Group M said to GARM's leader about Fox News, the Daily Wire, and Breitbart News. Employees from Group M said, quote, they hated their ideology. That employee was discussing how to pull advertising from these news outlets. And unfortunately, it's not just Group M. Unilever encouraged Facebook to label one of President Trump's political ads as misinformation during the 2020 election, which would have caused that ad to be removed from Facebook. GARM organized a boycott of Twitter when Mr. Musk bought the platform and bragged about cutting Twitter, and then they bragged about cutting Twitter's revenue by 80%. Unilever wrote to GARM's leader that the company had, quote, issues with overtly partisan takes by Elon Musk. The example Unilever gave was Elon Musk's handling of the Hunter Biden laptop story. Unilever had a problem with Elon Musk releasing internal Twitter documents to journalists and exposing how and why Twitter incorrectly suppressed the story about the Biden's family influence peddling. It's the Twitter files. GARM and its members threaten platforms that don't comply, and the best example is Spotify's Joe Rogan's comments on Spotify when Joe Rogan's comments about the COVID-19 vaccine. To be clear, any of these companies could, on their own, legally refuse to advertise on a certain platform or news outlet or with a certain content creator. Unilateral decisions are not illegal. But if they choose to pull advertising from the Daily Wire or other similar outlets, they will not be reaching millions of Americans who choose to consume that content, but their competitors will. In other words, no single company can unilaterally pull its advertising dollars off a platform or news outlet over a long period of time because that company's competitors will advertise and reach the audience. It's called the market. Ørsted, a Danish renewable energy company, explained it perfectly when its employees wrote an email to GARM asking when the Twitter boycott will end. Ørsted told GARM that Twitter, quote, is an important platform for us to reach our audience, so we would like to consider going back. But they looked to GARM for direction, and they were asking GARM for permission. And frankly, that's exactly how cartels operate. They collude against conservatives and other outlets, platforms, and content creators. In fact, they come right out and say it. GARM's leader wrote that the issue with the advertising industry and digital platforms is the, quote, extreme global interpretation of the U.S. Constitution. He also complained taking U.S. norms and applying them globally is something that's a concern, and said there's a problem with Americans' 230-year-old Constitution. If the WFA and GARM are allowed to continue, if these massive companies can collude without consequences, the results will be devastating. If this cartel continues to target conservative outlets, content creators with different voices and viewpoints, and any person that does not recite the so-called mainstream media talking points, there'll be real problems. They will deprive these good journalists and content creators of the funding they need to succeed. They will use their cartel to eliminate competition based on internal biases of these massive companies, and they will deprive Americans of the content that they actually want to consume.